Hi, and welcome to the U World Order Showcase podcast. Today we have with us Rob Z Wentz, is your last name?
Yep.
And he's from Lit Coaching, and he's here to tell us all about how transforming your life and your business are interconnected. So welcome to the show, Rob. I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on coaching, on life coaching, and how it intertwines with business coaching. What are your thoughts? Where are you from? Tell us all about you.
Jill, thank you so much, first of all, for having me here. I really appreciate it. I'm from Altoona, Pennsylvania. So I am in the middle of Pennsylvania. They say everything between Pittsburgh and Philly is called Pennsyltucky. So I'm in Pennsyltucky, about half an hour from Penn State University. And I am I'm certified as a personal development coach, as a life coach, and as a leadership coach. So I help people and I help businesses with breakthrough, with transformation, growing, as it says, as you can see on the side there, grow bigger, better, and faster in different facets of your life. And as we were saying before we started recording here, when it comes to like business and personal, man, everything that is professional comes back to personal. If you're going to start your own business, then a lot of personal things are going to come up, and personal development is necessary and a requirement of growing, right? So whether we're growing business, growing financially, growing personally, spiritually, physically, whatever that might be, everything comes back to growth and developing ourselves to be the best version of ourselves and finding new levels of potential. So that's what I love helping people do, is find those breakthroughs that help them elevate to find more potential. We all have unlimited potential, and I love people finding more of that potential in themselves.
Yeah, because, in my world, we talk a lot about knowing your avatar or knowing your ideal client, but your ideal client isn't just like one person, and it's not who you were 3 steps ago. There's different layers, and each layer has a different set of problems. And if you understand where you were when you had that burning problem that you needed to solve in order to even start your business, because that's a level in itself. And there's a whole set of problems there that's different from like the next layer up. And if you're not growing yourself and moving through the different layers yourself, then it's really hard to help other people navigate that. And I talk mostly with life, health, and transformational coaches, but it goes for any kind of business that you're running. It doesn't matter what you're selling.
Yeah, I love the concept of making your mess your message, right? So
Yes.
We're able to really speak to things and help people through things that we have gone through, right? So it's really difficult, and you can kind of tell when you're speaking to somebody, they might be giving you good advice, but they haven't lived through the thing and gotten through the thing. It's harder for them to speak directly to that thing, right? So I love that concept that's one of the reasons I wanted to become a coach, was because I've made a lot of mistakes personally and professionally. I've worked through a lot of them, still working through some of them, right? We're always working through something. But getting myself past those things, I'm like, I really love communicating. I spent 20 years in broadcasting in a previous life, 20 years as a radio broadcaster, hosted a morning show for a long time, and spent much of my life learning how to communicate with people. A lot of that time was how not to communicate with myself and communicate with others. And then a lot of time learning like, oh, this is how I need to talk to me. This is how I need to talk to other people so that I can, number one, gain their trust and build relationship with them, right? But number two, the more I find out who I am, the more I get through my stuff, the more I'm able to help people, which is why I find that leadership coaching is obviously in business, like we're helping people become better leaders in business, but a lot of people shy away from the term leadership. They shy away from that concept because, oh, I don't want to be a leader. Let somebody else handle this stuff. Well, look at the state of our country when we let people lead who might not be the best leaders, right? So if you're not a great leader of your own life and of yourself, how are you ever going to lead anybody else? So we have to strive to want to lead ourselves to be better versions of ourselves. And man, the only way to change the world is to change ourselves, right? So if we want to have an impact on the world around us, then we have to really work on ourselves. And it's everything to me. It's something that I pour my life into. So if I can help the things that I've made a mess of and that I've worked through, help other people go through that, that's what I love to do. It's so important.
And if you can help them avoid the pitfalls, because you can just be cruising along and then suddenly you find yourself at the bottom of this hole and you're like, oh my God, how did I end up here? And if you just had somebody that said, you're going to need to step 3 steps to the right, 4 steps ahead, and then 2 steps back to the left, you'll be golden. But
Yeah.
to avoid that hole. But when we're all wandering around in the dark and ending up in the holes, it doesn't really benefit the world. And I think that's how the world has been going for quite a while now. And it's really encouraging to me, and really why I do this show, because so many people are saying, hey, I saw that hole. Here's how you avoid it. And I'm like, come on over. Let me help you tell the world about that. And everybody's got something different. Everybody's mess was different. And there's a handful of people that are just meant for you. And I want to help you find them.
Yeah. It's funny sometimes too. You can read all about the hole and you can have people say, hey, look, there's the hole. And you're like, I still feel like I have to fall into that hole. I still end up in the hole and then working myself through it. Sometimes it seems like, well, I don't know if this is true or not, but for me, it seems like sometimes I could see somebody telling me something, here's a pitfall, but I still had to go through it myself. It seems like to fully understand it. And you were talking about avatars there a minute ago. And when I was trying to find my avatar, I was banging my head against the wall. Who is it that I'm supposed to be helping? Who is it that I'm supposed to be serving? And then I realized it was just me, the old version of me, like me 7 years ago. That's the person I really can help, because I can speak directly to that person, directly to what they're going through, because I went through it. And so I often encourage people with that. If you're trying to find out who it is you're supposed to be helping, well, the best person to help is the old you, because you know that person really, really well.
And you didn't just go from that person where you started to the person you are now. You went through several metamorphoses to get where you are now. They say, you can help somebody that's 2 steps behind you. Well, that's really 2 levels behind you, 2 problems ago that you've already solved, and you're still continuing to solve problems. And as you continue to solve problems, you can help more layers of that person that you once were, because they each have they're coming from a different perspective. Like the person that you started out as, well, let me use myself as an example, because I don't know who you were when you first started out. So when I first started out, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I knew that I wanted to do something, but I really didn't know how to do anything, really. I just knew I liked to help people. And then I got coaches, and I learned, and I read, and I tried some stuff, and most of it failed. That was the next layer. I knew that the information was out there, but I didn't know how to make it work for me. And then I learned some more, hired different coaches, got more trial and error, got more feedback from the data that I'd collected. And then I was at a different level. And then you reach a point where it's like, okay, I got a handle on this, and I can show you how to do it step by step to get to a level that's, wherever the level is. As I continue to move, I can pull these people up with me, or different people. But it's understanding where you were at each step of the way, and targeting your message to those people to solve that problem. And you can help all of the different layers, but if you start sending messages out to the different levels, then it confuses people.
Yes, absolutely. And when I'm working with a business, right, this is interesting, because one of the biggest problems businesses are having right now is they can't find good employees, right? And I hear
Yeah.
so often, oh, there's this, the workforce is terrible. There's nobody out there who wants to work anymore. And it's an excuse. It's a scapegoat. And that might be kind of true. It might be kind of true. But also the other truth is, if we become better communicators and we focus on, so here's a great example, right? So I work with like an amusement park, water park, and they have trouble finding staff for this amusement park because they're mostly like 16-year-olds, and 16-year-olds used to be clamoring for these jobs that pay below minimum wage, right? They're seasonal jobs. Nobody really wants to do them, but kids do them in the summertime. And so they, over the past couple of years running this issue, they can't find the right people. And so I started talking to them about like, well, how are you pouring into these kids when they come in to work for you, right? They're only there for a summer. They might not care about the job, but you have an opportunity as leaders of this company to pour into 16-year-olds and inspire them and help them find their strengths. Nobody maybe has ever done that for them. Most likely somebody has not. For most people get very little encouragement throughout their life, right? Intentional encouragement from people. So this person might come to work for this job for a summer, and they might get inspired by a leader there who's speaking into their life, helping them find their strengths, helping them to understand good morals, good values, helping them to become a personal leader, right? Helping them to see like, oh, it's not just a job, can be so much more than just something I come to and get money for. It can be something where I meet people that help me level up in life. And if you start treating people that way, who's going to want to leave that job, right? People will, and I've talked to enough people to know that people will stay at jobs that aren't great for a long time because they love the culture, they love the people. And this is whether it's business or it's personal. For personal things, like you'll spend time with people that you love to be around. It's just natural. And if you have good enough self-esteem, you'll notice these people aren't treating me well. I need to get away from them as fast as humanly possible. I need to get away from these people. They're toxic, right? So it's the same with work environments. You could have a crappy job, but if you love the people you work with and you have a connection with them and they just make you feel good about yourself, then you're going to want to be there. You're going to want to spend time with them, and it's going to change the culture of that company. It's going to change the way people look at it. It's such a simple concept, but we can lose sight of it so easily. So, we have opportunities every single day to pour into people and love on people and help them to see the goodness in themselves.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I know two examples of exactly what you're talking about. And there's a company around us called Nucor. They're a steel manufacturer, and they are an amazing company to work for. It's really hard to get on with them, but the way they pay their employees, it's based on production. So everybody is everybody else's boss. You better know your job. And if you're slacking off, that guy next to you, his paycheck depends on what you're doing. So you can bet your money that he's going to make sure you're doing your job excellent. He's going to do whatever it takes to make sure that you keep production up. Paying people to give them the results that you want. Another story, these are true stories. I have a son that works for Nucor. And I'm just like, it's an insanely amazing company. He'll be there for the rest of his life. But my husband worked for Walmart as a truck driver, and he went into the room with these truck drivers. And this was maybe, I don't know, close to 8 or 9 years ago when he started. And it was just as the truck driving, it was shortly after Sam Walton died, and their trucking, the trucking part of their business had a culture. And these guys had their own trucks. They were really proud of what they were doing. They were there for, like, a lot of these guys had been around drivers for Walmart for like 20 years. So there was a culture for the truck drivers. But the rest of the organization, they weren't paid very well. And, it's Walmart. So he goes into this meeting. It's a roundtable meeting with other truck drivers, and it was one of the first ones he was in. And they did the cheer because, they're trying to keep the culture going, but they're in a transition. And one of the managers said, we do these employee surveys, and we can't understand why truck drivers who are paid exceptionally well, one of the best paying jobs in the trucking industry is with Walmart. I mean, hands down, for time home, benefits, everything. And, you compare that to store workers who aren't paid all that well. So he's like, I can't understand why truck drivers are always having such high marks on satisfaction, where everybody else in all the other departments are like it's really low. So instead of like looking at, these are all the things we're doing for truck drivers, no wonder they love us, and applying that to the rest of the company, they just decided, well, we'll just start treating the truck drivers like the rest of the country or company.
Which is the exact opposite of what Sam Walton would have done.
Absolutely. I don't, my husband doesn't work for Walmart anymore, and I don't shop there because I just like, it just doesn't align with who I am and the values that I have. Sam Walton did, but the people that work there now, they don't care.
Yeah.
It's just.
And that's what happens, right? That culture shifts.
Mm-hmm.
And, it seems to be, I don't know, to me, it's so obvious, but I spend a lot of time thinking about this kind of stuff and talking to people about this kind of stuff. So it's obvious to me, like, these are the things that really matter. And what's the most important thing in our life? Like, when we die, are we going to be able to take anything with us? You can't take anything with you. So what's the most important?
I think relationships. I think
exactly.
You can take relationships with you.
That's I meant like physical, right? The physical things we take, but that's it. Relationships are the thing. We can build. What kind of impact did we make while we were here on earth? When we go up, I'm a Christian, so I believe if we get up there and we're talking to God, we're talking to Jesus, and he's like, and I've read books, I've read many near-death experience accounts, and there's a life review, and you're saying, look at these great accomplishments. Look, I got this promotion, I got this job, I made this amount of money, and they're like, we don't care about that. Look at these relationships. Look at the relationships that you built. Look at the relationships that you did not build. Look how you helped people and loved on people. Look how you hurt people and didn't love on them. And that's the thing that's highlighted over and over again in near-death experience life reviews. If you've never read into it, anybody who's watching or listening, there's a great book called Imagine Heaven. That book is phenomenal, just really, really good at going through these near-death experiences. And if you go on YouTube, you can find hundreds of them. Really, really interesting. And I don't know why
thousands.
I don't know why thousands of people would make up these stories, right? It's like, and a lot of them are very similar. So it's about relationships. So when you want to build something great, it comes down to how you're treating people, which seems obvious. It seems obvious, but we get lost in that in the day-to-day life.
I think part of it is that we get lost in the idea that we should love ourselves, because as you said in the beginning, it all starts with us. And if we don't have love, if we aren't fundamentally capable of loving ourselves, we can't possibly love somebody else, because we're so worried about getting love for ourselves. And you don't have to get love externally. You can just be satisfied with who you are. You're okay. You are enough. You have everything you need inside of you. Just let that other stuff go. And it's easier said than done, because we all have baggage, but there are tools and there are coaches and there are people around like you that can help them get through that, unpack the baggage, and make their lives, make themselves able to appreciate who they are so that they can share with others.
The interesting part of that, because this is speaking directly to my experience. Like, I had low self-esteem, low self-confidence, kind of hated myself, right, for a long time. So I was like miserable with who I was. And I remember watching Tony Robbins years ago, and he was saying, in order to grow, you have to be of service to others. In order to love yourself more, you have to love others more. And I was like, that doesn't even make any sense. I was so self-absorbed. I was like, that makes no sense to me. And so over the years of past like decade of putting this into practice, I realized the more I go out of my way to help other people and to build them up, the more I love myself. So it's interesting. So if I would spend time and I did spend a lot of time really trying to build up my own self-esteem, it didn't work. But the more that I spent time like helping others and getting outside of myself, and I think this is a problem with so much of people who are depressed, is we're spending so much time worrying about us and like, how am I going to get better? But when you like start helping people, and you're no longer thinking about you, because helping other people, you can't think about two things at once. If I'm thinking about helping this person, I can't think about me and how miserable I am. And when I see that person feel better, it makes me feel better. It's really interesting. And it's kind of like the hive mind kind of thing. We're all interconnected. We want to pretend like we're not, like we're insular. And that's where the ego comes in, right? The ego wants to think like I'm me and I'm not connected to anyone else. But go try to live by yourself and not talk to anybody for a year. And unless you're an enlightened being, you're probably you're gonna come out struggling. Like we need people. At least I do. I need people. I need interactions. I need that community, and I need to be of service to other people. And it's so helpful. And I think oftentimes we get stuck in our own BS. We get stuck in our own heads. And when you get outside of yourself and help, then you don't. Now I can't worry about me, and that actually helps me, which is counterintuitive, but it actually works.
It does work. It really does. And if you feel like I'm so broke, well, go help somebody that's really broke. Do something, give them your last $10. You're going to get more. They might not. It might make all the difference for them. Or go, help out at a soup kitchen. There's so many things you can do to help people around you. And you don't even have to like go out and look for people. They'll just show up. Trust me.
And if you're say you're at and you're not even going to volunteer, right? Say you have a job and you don't necessarily like your job, and there's somebody at that job who just make the job miserable because they're miserable. It's a fun game to play. This is a fun game to play. How nice can you be to the miserable person that you work with? How can you just be annoyingly nice to them to where you might actually break them? They might actually start being nice because of how nice you're being to them. Like show that person kindness. There's a guy I used to work with, and he was insufferable, like all the time. Like everything was just negative and bleh. And the guy used to drive me freaking nuts. I couldn't stand him. But then I started learning this sort of stuff, right? So I started just being nice to him. And I was just like, well, he said something mean. I'd be like, yeah, but it's not that bad. And I'd throw like a positive spin on it. I'd smile and say hi to him. And over time, he would get angry. I could tell he'd get angry at me and like annoyed by me by being nice to him because he didn't like that feeling. But over time, he started being nice to me. And I saw before I had left that job, it was my last radio job, I could see him start to change his attitude. And I'm not going to say it's me that did it, but I truly believe life is a reflection of how we feel on the inside, right? So my perspective started to change on him. My perspective of him started to change. So I started to see him in a different way. And I saw him as nicer, kinder. And I started to like, instead of loathing him, I started to feel compassion for him. Like this guy's hurting. Somebody else hurt him. I don't know why it happened or how it happened, but he's just living out the hurt that he experienced. And he needs an example that it can be different, and since he's putting out so much negativity, that's all he's getting back. So I try to be that difference. And so if you have a job and you have somebody like that at your job, that's a form, in my opinion, that's a form of volunteer work. You're volunteering positivity to help somebody who might just be living through misery. And there's a blessing in that for sure.
And you don't have to go and volunteer for helping people. There are people all around you. Just help them. Yeah. It's just like Nike says, just do it.
Absolutely. If I could say one more thing to that, my stepmom and I didn't always have a great relationship. And I really went through a period of forgiveness over the past couple of years, and I realized a great thing for me to do was, if I show up differently, I was gonna, my mentor Ray always talks about, how are you going to show up? You show up differently, people are going to show up differently. So I started to show up not with like a resistance, right? Because I would resist her. I started to embrace her of who she was. I started to embrace who she was. So when I showed up, I started to show up in a more loving way, in a more like open way of just accepting. And I won't go into detail, but like over the past couple of years, our relationship has drastically changed to where, like, I've gone up and consoled her when she's upset about things that I normally would like run and try to get out of there. But now I like had a heart to go up and like give her a hug and like try to see where she's at and understand what she's going through. And it's been life-changing for me, because it's very true that if we show up without resistance, then we won't receive resistance back. It's like that idea that you can't get rid of energy. You can just energy is going to go somewhere, but you can change it, but you're not going to get rid of it, right? So how are you going to change that vibration of how you're vibrating, and it affects how somebody else is, and you can just see the difference. But that for me has been a huge transformation in my life of, oh, right, if I want to take the leadership role in this position, I can. We all have the opportunity at all times to take the leadership position, but we might not realize it, especially when we're talking about family and old wounds, right? Because those are like on repeat. We're living like on a hamster wheel on those things. So if we can like step in and change those, that's powerful.
It's very powerful. It changes your whole life, and it changes generations. It's not just your life, but the lives of your children and your grandchildren and their children, because that's how you break the generational curses. Is
very true.
You step up and you figure out how to operate in love. And it's not something that everybody's taught.
And it's also not easy to do, right?
Well, it doesn't have to be hard. It's just knowing that it's okay. Mm-hmm. So what's the one thing you want to leave the audience with today, Rob? This has been great.
I'll leave them with, I think everything is a blessing depending on how you look at it. There's a blessing in everything, and everything that seems to be a curse in your life could be a gift. And I'll just say this. So my stepmom, I use that as an example again. I used to think like this is like a curse, but actually it's a gift. It's an opportunity to do things differently. It's an opportunity to see things differently. And through that, I've seen that situation has helped me see other situations differently in my life. So even how bad something can be, there's a blessing in it somewhere. Go back to Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning. He took the concentration camps as a blessing, that he created a whole entire line of psychiatry out of being in the concentration camps, which was called logotherapy, I think is what it was called. But man, there's blessings in everything. So if we can look at life that way, it makes the suffering actually seem meaningful, So I think that's my message.
And those lessons you can take with you.
Yes, those you can take with you. Good point. Yes.
All right, Rob, how do people get in touch with you?
If you want to talk to me, you could go to my website, which is leadimpacttransform.com. Facebook, Rob Z Wentz, WENTZ. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. I'll accept your friend request. So shoot me a friend request on Facebook, Rob Z Wentz, and we can connect and talk. Thanks, Jill. This has been awesome. I love this podcast. This is great.
This has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. And I will put the links in the show notes below. Thank you so much for joining me today, Rob.
Thank you.